Your phone just buzzed. In your pocket, on the table, wherever it is right now. You felt it. That little pulse. Maybe you checked. Maybe you didn't. But here's what I need you to sit with for a second. There's a decent chance it didn't actually buzz. Your leg generated a phantom nerve signal, a false vibration, because your brain has reassigned a cluster of sensory neurons in your thigh to serve as a permanent notification monitor. This isn't a metaphor. A study from Georgia Tech found that 89% of smartphone users experience phantom vibrations regularly. Your brain has literally rewritten your body's sensory map to include a device that isn't part of your anatomy. Your thigh now has a job it didn't have 10 years ago, waiting for your phone. And you never noticed because it feels normal. Everything the phone has done to your brain feels normal. That's the problem. That phantom vibration is a symptom, one tiny symptom of a rewiring so thorough that if a drug did this, we'd call it what it is. Chemical dependency with cognitive side effects. You pick up your phone 80 to 120 times a day. Not because you decided to. Because your brain fires a dopamine-seeking impulse every 8 to 12 minutes, and the phone is the fastest hit available. You can't sit in a waiting room for 2 minutes without reaching for it. You've opened Instagram, closed it, and reopened it in the same minute without making a conscious decision. None of this is willpower failure. All of it is neural architecture. And nobody handed you the blueprint. The reason I removed my phone for 30 days wasn't a documentary or a health article. It was a Tuesday. I was eating leftover pasta, holding a fork in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling Twitter while chewing. I realized I couldn't remember the last meal I'd eaten without the phone. So I tried. Put it face down on the table. Ate the next bite, staring at the kitchen wall. 12 seconds. That's how long I lasted before my hand moved back on its own. 12 seconds of looking at a wall was so uncomfortable that my arm acted without permission. And I thought very calmly, I can't eat pasta without this thing. Something is wrong. So I ran the experiment. 30 days. No smartphone. What I'm walking you through isn't a detox diary. It's a withdrawal timeline, based on dopamine receptor research, neuroplasticity studies, and what I documented in my own head day by day. 3 phases. Phase 1, days 1 through 9. Cognitive collapse. Attention, processing speed, and emotional regulation get worse, not better. Phase 2, days 10 through 19. The emotional flood. With the dopamine drip removed, your brain starts feeling things it's been numbing for years. Phase 3. Days 20 through 30. Neural reallocation. The brain repurposes the cognitive real estate that was dedicated to phone monitoring, and what it builds is something most people haven't accessed since they were 14. 3 phases. 1 withdrawal, and a version of your brain on the other side you might not recognize. But before the timeline, you need to understand what's being withdrawn from. Not, phones are bad. A damage assessment. 4 specific things the phone has installed in your brain over the past decade. Explained so you can feel each one as I describe it. First, dopamine interval compression. Your brain's reward system was built for intermittent, unpredictable rewards, spaced hours or days apart. Your phone delivers variable ratio dopamine hits every 3 to 8 minutes. The brain adapted by compressing its reward interval. It now expects stimulation at that frequency. Remove the phone, and the brain doesn't slowly adjust. It crashes. Neuroscientists call it reward prediction error. The brain predicted stimulation, received silence, and registers that silence as pain. Second, attention fragmentation. Gloria Mark at UC Irvine measured average sustained attention on a single task. In 2004, 5 minutes. By 2024, 47 seconds. But it's not just shorter, it's structural. Your brain now pre-slices focus into phone-sized intervals. You don't decide to check after 47 seconds. Your attention just ends. The brain built an automatic interrupt cycle, and removing the phone doesn't remove the cycle. For 10 days, your attention breaks every 47 seconds, reaches for a phone that isn't there, and crashes into nothing. Third, and this is the one that matters most, emotional outsourcing. When you feel bored, you scroll. Anxious? Scroll. Lonely? Restless? Uncomfortable? The phone numbs it within 2 seconds. Your brain has gradually outsourced emotional processing to a device. Remove it, and the brain has to relearn a skill it hasn't practiced in years, sitting with discomfort until it passes. That's why phase 2 is the emotional flood. Old emotions that were never processed finally surfacing because the numbing agent is gone. Fourth, the default mode network hijack. Your brain has a network that activates when you're doing nothing, responsible for self-reflection, creative connection, future planning. It's behind your best ideas in the shower, your deepest thinking during long walks. The phone colonized it. Every idle moment that would have activated this network is now filled with scrolling. The network doesn't die, but it atrophies, and what it produces when it wakes back up around day 20 is what makes the final phase feel like meeting a version of yourself you forgot existed. 4 changes. Installed over a decade. So embedded they feel like personality traits. I just have a short attention span. I get bored easily. Those aren't personality traits. Those are symptoms. Here's what happens when the source is removed. The first thing that happens isn't philosophical. It's muscular. Day 1, my hand moved toward my pocket 67 times. I counted. Not because I wanted my phone, because my motor cortex fired an automatic reaching sequence that had nothing to do with conscious choice. 67 phantom reaches. By day 2, it dropped to 41. By day 5, 12. But those first 48 hours are unnerving. Not because you miss the phone, but because you realize your body has been running programs you didn't write. Day 3 is when the cognitive decline hits. I sat down to read a book I'd been excited about and couldn't get through a full page. 3 sentences in, my attention would just, evaporate. Not wander, evaporate. My eyes kept moving across the words, but the comprehension was gone. This is dopamine receptor downregulation. Flood those receptors with high-frequency stimulation for years, and the brain reduces receptor density. It takes more to register the same reward. Pull the phone away, and those down-regulated receptors are trying to process a book, and they can't. The signal is too weak for the hardware. A book feels boring not because it is boring, but because your reward circuitry has been recalibrated for a frequency the book can't match. Days 6 through 9 introduce something nobody warns you about: time warping. Without the phone punctuating your day every few minutes, time loses its structure. An hour of doing nothing feels like 3. A 10-minute wait at the grocery store feels existential. Your brain had been using the phone as a temporal metronome, and without it, time becomes an unbroken mass. I remember lying in bed on day 7, no screen glow, just the ceiling and the weird texture of total silence, and my eyes didn't know where to rest. They kept searching for the rectangle of light they were trained to aim at. And my hands, around 9 p.m., the scrolling hours, got restless. Not emotional restlessness. A physical one in the fingers, like they'd forgotten their job. The irritability arrived there too. Not anger at anything specific. A low-grade buzzing agitation in the chest and the jaw. Shorter with people. Evenings stretching into a heaviness that felt physical. This is where 90% of phone detoxes die. Not because the person caved to temptation, because the experience is so disorienting that it feels like something is wrong. And something is wrong. Your brain is in withdrawal. But wrong isn't damaged. Wrong is the first stage of recalibration. Most people quit before it begins. Phase 1 feels like evidence that you need the phone. That's the cruel trick of withdrawal. The symptoms masquerade as proof the substance was helping. I can't focus without my phone feels like a reason to pick it back up. What it actually means, your focus was so dependent on the phone's dopamine cycle that it can't yet function alone. That's not a reason to go back. That's the diagnosis. Day 12. I'm in the cereal aisle of a grocery store. Nothing has happened. Nobody said anything. And my eyes start filling with tears. Over nothing. Not sad tears. Not happy tears. The kind that feel like pressure releasing from a pipe sealed for years. I stood there maybe 20 seconds, blinked hard, grabbed the Cheerios, kept walking. That night sitting on my bed, where did that come from? It didn't feel like something new arrived. It felt like something old finally reached the surface. What's happening in phase 2 is the reversal of emotional outsourcing. For years, every time discomfort began forming, the phone was there in seconds. Bored, scroll, anxious, messages, lonely, social media. The emotion never completed its cycle. Interrupted, numbed, stored. Think of it as emotional debt. Every interrupted feeling is a transaction your brain started but never closed. Remove the phone, and the brain starts completing those transactions. Not one at a time. In waves. The grief you didn't process when your friend moved away. The Sunday evening loneliness you scrolled past. The career anxiety you buried under podcast noise. They arrive without context, as sensation. Heaviness in the chest. Tightness in the throat. Tears with no story attached. The brain isn't breaking, it's processing. For the first time in years. Days 13 through 17 are the hardest stretch of the entire 30 days. The waves don't come on schedule. They ambush you. A Tuesday afternoon staring at a spreadsheet, and suddenly a memory of your grandmother hits with a vividness that stops your breath. A Thursday evening doing dishes, and a sourceless guilt you can't pin to anything. A Saturday morning where the loneliness isn't social. It's existential. And the physical markers are specific. Tightness behind the sternum. A constriction in the throat when an unprocessed memory surfaces. That verge of tears feeling while folding laundry. These aren't depressive episodes. They're processing events. But they feel indistinguishable from depression. Which is exactly why this is the window where people reinstall their apps. Not because they miss scrolling. Because the feelings are unbearable. And the phone is the fastest anesthetic available. Here's what could save the experiment. The emotional flood isn't a sign you need the phone. It's a sign you needed to feel these things years ago and the phone prevented it. Every wave is debt being cleared. And clearing debt hurts. But picking the phone back up doesn't erase the debt. It reseals the pipe. The emotions go underground, accumulate interest, and wait. The decision around day 12 isn't, should I keep going? Yes, she. It's, am I willing to let my brain finish what it started? Pick the phone up here, and you've endured all the withdrawal and received none of the repair. All the pain, none of the payoff. 8 days away from transformation, and you'll never know. Day 21. I'm sitting in a park, not reading, not listening to anything, just sitting. And I notice something I haven't experienced in so long it takes a minute to identify. A complete thought. Not a fragment. A full multi-layered thought that builds on itself for 3 straight minutes without interruption. I'm thinking about a conversation with my brother. My brain connects it to something I read 6 months ago. Connects that to a project I abandoned 2 years ago. And suddenly I see a pattern between all 3 I'd never noticed. It's what normal cognition feels like when the default mode network runs at capacity. I just hadn't experienced it in so long that it felt like a superpower. Here's what the brain is actually doing. Imagine you own a building with 50 offices. Each office is a cluster of neural circuits assigned to a function. 10 years ago, those offices were distributed. 8 for sustained attention, 6 for emotional processing, 5 for creative thinking, 4 for deep social connection. Then a new tenant showed up, very demanding, willing to pay top dollar in dopamine. The phone. Over a decade, office by office, it bought out the building. Attention offices? Converted to notification monitoring. Emotional processing suites. Scroll reward loops. Creative floor? Social comparison cycles. By 2024, the phone occupies 35 of your 50 offices, and you're running your entire life out of the remaining 15. What happens around day 20? The eviction begins, and office by office, you move back in. Neuroscientists call this competitive neuroplasticity. Neural real estate gets reassigned to whatever uses it most. Frequency wins, not importance. Remove the phone, and the brain reclaims. Attention circuits that were sliced into 47-second fragments begin consolidating. The reward system starts finding satisfaction in slower activities. A conversation, a long walk, a meal eaten without a screen. The default mode network, starved for years, floods back online. The changes in the last 10 days aren't dramatic. They're textural. Day 22. I read for 45 minutes without a single attention break. The focus just held. Day 24. A 2-hour dinner conversation. No phone, but more than that. No internal phone. No part of my brain scanning for something better. I was present in a way that made me realize I hadn't been fully present in years. Day 26. I woke up and lay in bed for 10 minutes just thinking. No anxiety. No reaching. Thoughts arriving, developing, connecting, dissolving on their own schedule. It felt like my brain was breathing, like it had been holding its breath for a decade and finally exhaled. And the boredom I'd dreaded? It wasn't unpleasant. It was spacious, like a room you'd kept packed with furniture and finally cleared out. Now see the full arc. Days 1 through 9. The brain collapses because it's been running on a chemical cycle the phone installed. That's not weakness. That's evidence of how deep the dependency runs. Days 10 through 19. Your brain floods with emotions it's been numbing for years, and most people reach for the phone as an anesthetic. That's not failure. That's your brain completing processing that was interrupted 1,000 times. Days 20 through 30. The brain repurposes the infrastructure it surrendered to the phone. And what it builds? Sustained attention, emotional depth, creative synthesis, real presence, is what your brain was doing before the phone arrived. You didn't gain new abilities. You recovered old ones. And here's what should change how you think about every notification, every scroll, every 3-minute check. Each one isn't just taking your time. It's bidding on your cognitive real estate. And it's winning, not because it's important, but because it's frequent. Frequency beats importance every time. Unless you know the game is being played. I'm not going to ask you to give up your phone for 30 days. You won't do it. I know because I wouldn't have done it either if I'd known what the first 9 days actually felt like. And asking someone to commit to 30 days of cognitive withdrawal based on a YouTube video is irresponsible. So here's what I'm asking instead. 5 days. Not as a detox, as a diagnostic. A brain scan you run on yourself. This weekend, starting Friday evening, put your phone in a drawer, face down, on silent, where reaching for it requires a conscious physical act. Don't delete apps. Don't announce it. Just drawer it. Then pay attention. Not to how you feel, but to what your body does. Count the phantom reaches on day 1. Notice when your attention evaporates on day 2. Clock the time distortion on day 3. How long does an hour feel without the phone carving it into pieces? Track the irritability on day 4. On day 5, try to read a full chapter of a book. Notice if the attention holds or fragments. That's your data. That's your nervous system's dependency scan. What you see in those 5 days will tell you more than any screen time report, because reports show you numbers. This shows you your brain. If you're already thinking, I can't do 5 days. I need my phone for work, emergencies, directions. Notice what just happened. Your brain generated 3 reasons to protect its dopamine supply before you finished the sentence. That's not practical thinking. That's the dependency talking. The resistance you feel right now, that slight tightness, the "but what if," that's day 1. You're already in the experiment. The question is whether you'll run it or quit in 5 seconds. On day 30, I didn't feel enlightened. I felt like an old person, the one who existed before the phone showed up and quietly replaced the parts of my brain that used to do what I now pay apps to do. Remember, focus, sit with myself, be bored, think one thought all the way to its end. That person was still there, underneath a decade of dopamine cycles and attention fragments and phantom vibrations and emotions that never got to finish. Not damaged, not gone, just buried. It took 30 days to dig him out, but you can see the first shovelful in 5. Your phone didn't break your brain. It buried it under a decade of 3-minute dopamine cycles, 47-second attention fragments, and emotions that were never allowed to finish. The brain underneath is still there. It took 30 days to reach it. It takes 5 to prove it exists. Before you start the 5-day diagnostic, drop your prediction in the comments. How many times will your hand reach for your phone on day 1? Not check it, reach for it. The phantom reach. Put a number. Then run the experiment and come back with the real count. The gap between prediction and reality is the most honest data you'll ever collect about your own brain. Subscribe if you want more content that treats your brain as hardware worth understanding, not a personality to be judged.